Thank you for waiting. I'm very excited about this session, about your questions, and about short film writing. What happens a lot is that because of the lack of a good story, a short film gets into production and then gets into problems. The best stage where you can fix your short is in the pre-production, in the writing, in the storyboarding, in the animatic. That is the best moment where you can still save a short film that is destined to fail and change it and make it something very good. So let's get started with your questions. We have one from Diblik Mendizabal. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You say, in your video, Ariel Goldberg mentioned that we can update our work. Which social media do you recommend to upload my stories or articles? I imagine articles are I'm more familiar with what you can do with video compared to articles, which I think it could be a short story that you publish on a website. With social media, you should think about what the main audience is looking for on each platform. So of course, it's going to be a little different on LinkedIn, that it's more, a professional tone compared to Instagram or X or Facebook. And it depends on the medium. I think Instagram is where a lot of recruiters are nowadays for visual art. For any person aspiring to get into animation, you cannot escape from the visuals. You do need to communicate visually. So even if you're a writer, you might find ways to talk about your story with maybe a reel that is pitching the story. Please let me know if this answers your question, and I want to make sure I understood correctly. Let's move on. It's great to see some people from the WFA Animation Academy. We are working on our short films there, and we'll tell you more about it later. Okay, so we have one question. What are the essential elements of a great animated short film? Think about your experience going to the theater or watching a short film on YouTube, Netflix, or Disney. Anytime you watch a short film, you usually get two kinds of experiences with short films. You can get into a mini feature film where you empathize with the character, where you understand what's going on, and where you are transported to a different world with interesting characters. And sometimes short films are more of an experimental exploration of the animation medium. Here at WFA Animation, we believe that the first option is the best way to showcase yourself and your voice, but also that it's not really about you as an artist, it's about you in communication with the audience and creating something that resonates with people. This approach allows you to explore structures and narratives that can later become series or films. You can find amazing commercials that are like a mini movie in 30, 60, 90 seconds. There's a whole story. You really connect with the audience. You're transported in a wonderful world. In animation, you see how they use the medium to the fullest. Every now and then, I'm part of the jury for some film festivals, and I try to help a lot of universities. I get to watch films that are in competition, but also a lot of student films. And let me tell you that it's really painful to see that the crew put so much work into something that it's so close to being a good story, but the script was not polished enough, or they didn't have the knowledge that is necessary to understand some principles that have always worked, so that then you can decide what to embrace and what to reject and break all the rules. The fundamental element for a short film is the fact that the audience can connect with the story. Usually that happens when you are able to set up a world, genre, and tone that you understand, and then you get to meet a protagonist, and then you get to follow them through a journey. And even if it's very introspective, very slow, that has nothing to do with a genre film like an action Hollywood blockbuster film or a big Disney movie, you are still connecting with the audience. And that is where a lot of films, they fail to do that. We'll probably touch upon some of the common mistakes that can be very dangerous and be a deal breaker. Sometimes those are very easy to fix, and they could mean the difference between something you show around but doesn't really resonate to something that can really move the audience, be recognized in awards and at festivals, and can really launch your career, because a short film is the best calling card you can have in the industry. Let's see if we have more questions here. How do I come up with an original concept for my short film? This is a great question, because as storytellers, we are constantly surrounded by stories. The first place I would go is within, to create a story from the inside out, to really get into what moves you as a person, what is something that makes you think about life, society, people. A great exercise that we actually did in the course in the WFA Animation Academy, before we got to our stories and characters, was to take a moment, just 5 or 10 minutes, and write down alone something very emotional that happened to you. It could be a wonderful emotion, or it could be something very hard to process and something that maybe it's hurtful. Tap into those things you're afraid to explore. That's usually the best source for short film ideas. Or you might have a great idea that's very high concept. By high concept, I mean an idea that's very catchy, easy to see the poster of the film, and something you hear and say, yeah, I want to see that. Try to pause your process, pause everything that is external and connected to the plot and the characters you had, and take a moment to explore what are some personal elements, some personal experiences and themes in your life. Some of them can be painful, exciting, or interesting realizations that you discover. And sometimes those things are connected. You know, we usually grow through pain to some degree. We grow by going outside of our comfort zone. And that is the best source of the soul of a story that maybe came from a cool idea that you had, maybe from journaling, a dream, something you saw on the street, a social media post, or something that, oh, wouldn't it be cool to tell a story in this world with these characters? Yeah, but then you need a soul, okay? So I think that is the best source of ideas. Of course, write down everything. You know, you can start mixing things up. There's so many things you can do to actively search for a story. You can have a brainstorming session and look around your desk and say, you know, I have, let's find, I have this battery, and I have a drawing of a bear with a hat on. And so I'm going to try to find a story between, like, something that has to do with a battery and a bear. And you start writing down everything that can happen. Will the bear swallow the battery? Something I do, I call it the spider. I write, for example, bear and battery. I start writing all around the page, tiny bubbles where I write everything that comes to mind when I think about a bear with a hat on and a battery. Or you can start by creating a conversation and writing down what would be if I could listen to a conversation. I'm looking at my desk between the mouse and the keyboard, and you start writing. It's not like you want to write a short film about that, but it's just to free yourself from any judgmental or artistic thoughts you can have in regard to the quality of your work. When we have a blank page, it's easy to have our perfectionist mind trying to create a story. Before creating a story, you need to bring something into existence. You need to put something there to work on. Then you can work from that and start creating and refining. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's go to the next one. What are some tips for writing a compelling opening scene? That is a really good question. In a short film, you don't have a lot of time. An opening scene is even more important than in a feature film. It's more challenging because you need to make the audience empathize and fall in love to some degree with the protagonist. Or I would say be captivated by them. Not necessarily liking them or falling in love with them, but there must be something so intriguing about the protagonist that you want to follow their journey. That is the goal, especially in a short film, to cut to the chase and get really into who is your protagonist. As I mentioned in the WFA Animation Academy, we are now going through this Write Your Short course. The premise for the experience is writing a short film in 4 weeks, is that we're not looking for story ideas in terms of what if this happens, but we're looking for character ideas, because character is story and story is character. The plot is a consequence of who the character is. In an opening scene, we want to learn who the story is about and who this person is. Something that's very common is to do some exercises where you put your main character into different situations that sometimes are not related to the plot and the story. And that pushes you to explore a character that's interesting regardless of the story. I've spoken about this with many filmmakers. Jared Bush, who directed from Encanto, Zootopia, shared how for Zootopia, they had a completely different story. But what stayed was the essence of these two characters. The dynamic between the two was so powerful that they knew they could put them anywhere. The more your characters are intriguing and compelling, the easier it will be to have the freedom and the courage to change the plot until you find the perfect blend between who these characters are and the situation they're in. In the opening scene, you want to understand the world, the setting, and the tone of the film. Also think about visually, explore many options for your opening shot. What is the very thing that we are gonna see? Think about the audio as well, how we're gonna experience the sound and music in the very first moments of the short film. Think about Jaws. Even from the credits, you see the iconic music from John Williams, and you understand there's tension. Then you discover we are underwater. So from the very beginning, you understand the tone, and you can do that with your short film as well. So let's go with another question from Toy Collector Magazine. Any thought on script versus storyboard when creating the story for an animated project? I love that question because animated short film is written on the page as much as it's written in the storyboard phase. So get to storyboard as soon as possible. Don't worry about screenwriting format. We have a couple of videos on how to write in screenwriting format so you can learn all the rules. But don't worry too much about that because you're thinking about story beats. You can draw and think about capturing a story beat, which is a moment that moves the story forward in a single thumbnail, a quick sketch that represents a moment in the scene. You can place them on a board, either physical drawings or digitally. You want to get to a storyboard and to an animatic. An animatic is a series of storyboards that you edit together so that you can play the film before you get into production. I encourage everyone to do that as soon as possible. It's also low budget compared to the full production and can be a wonderful way to put yourself out there. It can be a wonderful calling card, and it can be a wonderful occasion for those of us who are not very skilled with drawings and perspective, shots and camera placement. With drawings, it becomes a way for you to connect with other story artists or people that are into the visual side of storytelling, and to create together, to bring the story to life in storyboards and pictures. Apart from writing, what other abilities and knowledge does a screenwriter need? It is important to understand the visual medium and how collaborative the medium is. And the more you get to understand how a production works, and you can do that by meeting people, attending festivals, going to talks and panels. You can also watch a lot of behind-the-scenes videos on how the movies you love were created. You start to perceive that the visual language is as important as the written word on the page, if not even more. And so you start to understand what are the kind of things that you can solve visually that maybe as a writer you try to solve on the page. A writer in animation is not someone that goes into his or her cave in complete isolation, writes the script, and then brings it to the studio to execute. And that's a big misunderstanding because sometimes in live action, that is exactly the case. You know, there are rewrites, there are writing rooms, there are groups where you are very connected with the director, but animation is way, way more collaborative. What is magical about animation is that you are not alone. You get so much from the story artists. When I work on projects and I see the art before I'm even starting to write, because sometimes a director or an artist came up with an idea or a very interesting character. And then there's no story at that point, but there are some elements, maybe something very rough or initial thoughts on how the story can develop. And then you get in as a writer and you already have the mesmerizing experience of seeing the art and the characters already taking shape visually. I think that is fantastic. Starting to write from scratch, from ideas, from conversations, and then seeing the other departments, storyboard artists, character designers, creating those characters and starting to explore things. It becomes this amazing cycle where you write, but you're also inspired. You get to see the characters and think about them, almost like asking them, what would you do in this situation? You have the characters designed to look at. But even more important than the art is the artist behind the art. And so you get to have conversations with the entire team, specifically the story team that helps you bring into storyboards what you're writing on the page. At some point, you'll get to the animatic so that you can see something that's hard to see on the page, which is the pace, the timing, how some jokes land, how some action moments work visually, and how much more a story artist and a story team can bring to the story. The story artist is as important as the writer in creating the story. It's really a collaborative project. And so, again, what are the skills? You need to be able to, first of all, check your ego at the door and be open. This is not your project. This is our project. It's a project that the entire team is working on, and great ideas can come from everyone in the team. So for you as a writer to listen and to let other people bring their unique perspective to the story will make you a better writer, and it will make a much better story. Tom Moore, the director, co-writer, and co-founder of Cartoon Saloon, and he said that soft skills are one of the most important things to succeed in the industry. I think finding ways to be humble, listen to people, and really pay attention to their point of view is important. For me personally, a wonderful experience has been working with directors, because you get into these situations where you work together. It's like a dance where you try to understand a different perspective and bring your perspective. The mix of the two perspectives brings out world, characters, and story that is better than what we can do on our own. And if there's a moment where there is a disagreement towards a scene, I always notice that if I really pay attention to what is the intention of the director, or why do they see it differently? Sometimes a natural, honest first reaction is thinking, and a gut reaction can be, this doesn't make any sense to me. I'm very sure that this is a bad route to take, and we should not go there. And I think that is a mistake. That feeling is gonna be there in your first reaction, and that is fine. Accept that, and that's part of the process. That's a good thing, because you have taste, you have some opinions, and you know how you think the story should be. But if you start listening, if you forget about your assumptions and really listen to them, you start seeing that idea in a different way. 99% of the time, I get to understand why they were trying to do that. Then I realized that was a better choice. Not always, but most of the time that's the case. I've been lucky enough to work with people that I really admire, respect, and they're very collaborative and humble. Every now and then there is a situation where I try to listen and I disagree. I still think that the other way is the best way. But guess what? They are the director. I am the writer. I'm helping them shape their vision. For me to pull one way when they're trying to assemble a vision that goes way beyond what I'm doing would be a great mistake, because we will be creating something like a creature that is all over the place and cannot walk. In those moments, I usually say, I still think the other way is the best one, but rest assured that I'm gonna work to help you make your vision the best version it can be, respecting everything you have in mind for it and not trying to change it toward my way. Usually that extra step is what I needed to understand what they wanted, or for them to understand what I wanted. And sometimes you need to explore one version, and maybe you get to a third version that is not, it's not really absolutely not about who had the idea. Forget about all that. It's about what's best for the story. So those are, I would say, the two abilities that you should have as a writer. I'm not telling you you need to learn how to draw, you need to learn how to sculpt, and those skills can help, but you don't need to learn all the skills in the animation pipeline to be a writer or a director. Let's go to the next question from Thorn. Any tips on pitching a short film you're developing, especially to convince other students, which is what my school requires for final projects? I love that your school is encouraging you or requiring you to do that for your final projects, because it puts you in a situation that is similar to what happens within the industry. There are no tricks or shortcuts. If a story is good, it will be impossible to ignore. If you have a compelling script, everybody will turn and look at it. You pitch your story the same way you would pitch a movie that was amazing, that you've just seen and watched in the movie theater, and you're telling a good friend. So don't focus on the fact that this is a short, the film, or something that will be animated. Don't focus on the technique. Is it 2D? Is it stop motion? Is it 3D? Focus on telling the story of characters as if they were real, and try to have the other person fall in love with the story and not what could be cool about being part of the team. The secret ingredient for any good story is that once you start listening, you're engaged and you care for the protagonist, and so you're intrigued by them and you want to know more what's going to happen to them. Now, on a more practical level, at some point, especially in the context of what you're doing at school, you will have to present some visuals, maybe some references. So I would say that a pitch deck is the best way to go. How can you create a pitch deck if you're looking for the artists that would create the pitch deck? And so you can start with references. Let's say you grab stills from shows that you like. It could be, I love this vibe from Arcane. I love this other element from another show. You can create a page where you have comps comparing your short film with other things that are out there. It doesn't matter if they're feature films, short films, or series. It allows the person you're pitching to understand what is the vibe, what is the tone, the genre. It also shows that you are prepared. What is the visual language, the other characters besides the protagonist, if you have more than one, and locations also if you have more than one location. I think it will be very important if they see that you are organized in terms of the budget and the time. Maybe there's no monetary budget, but you do still have a budget, because time is your currency and deadlines are the things keeping you within budget. How do you present your one-pagers at a convention like Pixelato, and to whom? Pixelato is the biggest animation film festival in Mexico. That is where I live. I'm Italian, but I moved here years ago. I love Pixelato. It's a fantastic place to meet people. It's small enough so that you can bump into all the speakers and panelists and get to chat with them and get to know many artists. And they have a section within the festival that is Mercado, is basically the marketplace, the same way that Annecy has MIFA. It's a section that is more professional, where they have a lot of things that are about pitching, and so you get to pitch with people from different studios, and usually that is the setting where you can pitch yourself. The other thing that I suggest is to find spontaneous ways to talk about your story. A common mistake that I see is getting to the pitch right away and not getting to know the person before. Instead of establishing some kind of rapport and understanding the context, approach any conversation with interest in the other person and not with the urgency of, oh, I got to get to as many pitches as possible. Those genuine conversations usually lead to a moment where they will ask you, so what are you into? Do you have any project of your own? Wait until that moment, and then you can work. I would say a one-pager, which is a prose version of your story in a single page with your contact information, the title, the logline, and the synopsis. That's a wonderful way to share a story as a leave behind, as a document that maybe you decide to leave to the person. Reading that or going through that together usually doesn't work in a festival environment like Pixelato. It's much better for you to rehearse over and over the way you pitch verbally and tell them the story as if you were telling them about a film you loved and just watched in the movie theater. Going back to the simplicity of a good pitch. And then let them ask you questions about it. Hopefully this was helpful. Sorry for the glitches in the technical aspect. Now I figured out how this works. And before you leave, I want to invite you to join the Write for Animation Academy. It's something that I'm putting my heart into this community, and I have an amazing team that is helping me. Even more amazing is the fact that we get, both the team and I, we get to know and interact and help and work together with people from all around the world. People like you that are passionate about the storytelling and want to thrive in this amazing industry. And, for any negative note, you can read gossips about the state of the industry, despair about AI and whatnot. But I think it's still the best job in the world to be able to give life to these characters and see them on the screen. And now more than ever, you're able to do it by yourself, with your friends, with a small team, and create something. So the Write for Animation Academy is a membership. It's online. We have people from all over the world. We write together. We give each other feedback. And now we're going through this course called Write Your Short that allows you to finish a short film in 4 weeks. Our goal is to write something that can get into production in 2025 and finish the year with the satisfaction of a complete animated film script. You can join today from writeforanimation.com/academy. And so thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you for your wonderful questions. Feel free to follow up via DM or by email. My email is pietro@writeforanimation.com. I read all the emails. I always answer personally. Sometimes it takes a while to get there, but rest assured, or remind me if you don't hear back from me. And if you haven't subscribed, this is a great moment to do that. It really helps my team and I create even more content, and we'll create more lives like this one. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.